Businessman defends his employee upon seeing her being humiliated by the manager. He makes an invitation that would change her life. She is shocked to see what he does when... Subscribe to our channel to ensure you don't miss any more incredible stories like this one, and don't forget to leave your like to continue following us. The delicate aroma of vanilla and chocolate lingered in the air, enveloping every corner of the sophisticated pastry shop. The atmosphere, illuminated by crystal chandeliers and decorated with dark wood furniture, exuded elegance. Glass shelves displayed meticulously prepared sweets, while customers, mostly from the upper class, savored the fine confections at tables adorned with subtle floral arrangements. Behind the main counter, Amelia focused on finishing an artistic cake. Her skillful fingers handled the piping bag with precision, drawing perfect patterns on the creamy frosting. She loved that job, but she knew her passion for pastry was constantly crushed by the disdain of the manager, Benjamin. Benjamin, a man with an impeccable appearance but eyes always filled with coldness, walked through the hall, observing everything with critical eyes. He liked to make it clear that he was in control. His tone was cutting, always laced with veiled sarcasm. That day in particular, he seemed more impatient than usual. "This is awful, Amelia," he grumbled, holding one of the sweets freshly prepared by her. "How do you expect demanding customers to pay for something so mediocre?" The hall fell silent. The other employees lowered their heads, fearing they would be the next targets of the manager's disdain. The embarrassment burned in Amelia's chest, but she did not react. She was already used to being humiliated. Among the customers, a man watched the scene attentively. He was seated near the large sweets display, elegantly dressed in a dark suit, his hair neatly styled and a sharp gaze, as if analyzing every detail around him. Daniel was not an ordinary customer. His name circulated among the most influential businessmen in the city, owner of multiple businesses and known for making quick and accurate decisions. His gaze fell on Amelia. He noticed the way she tried to hide her frustration, the way her expression tightened to avoid showing the pain she felt. Daniel did not like injustices, and he liked even less to see talents wasted by others' arrogance. As Benjamin continued his humiliating speech, Daniel stood up with the same serenity of someone who already knew what he would do. His voice was firm, but not aggressive. "Manager Benjamin, could you accompany me for a moment?" he said, attracting everyone's attention. Benjamin, surprised by the approach, tried to maintain his authoritative posture. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I'm busy at the moment." "No longer," Daniel retorted, his eyes loaded with a mix of seriousness and determination. The entire pastry shop held its breath. Benjamin himself seemed to hesitate for a moment before, reluctantly, following Daniel to a more secluded corner. What was said between them remained a mystery to the employees, but minutes later, both returned to the hall. Benjamin looked pale. "From today on, you no longer work here," Daniel announced casually. The impact of those words reverberated through the environment. A buzz filled the pastry shop. The employees exchanged glances, surprised. Amelia's eyes widened, unsure if she had heard correctly. "You can't do this!" Benjamin tried to argue, now with an altered tone, but Daniel remained unfazed. "Actually, I can," he said, displaying a slight smirk. "I've just acquired the majority stake of the business." Benjamin had no choice. Humiliated, he gathered his belongings and rushed out, leaving behind a thick silence. Everyone was in shock. No one expected that in a matter of minutes, the man who terrorized the employees would be ousted so abruptly. Amelia was still trying to process what had just happened when she felt Daniel's gaze on her. He said nothing at once, just analyzed her with contained interest, as if he had already made his first assessment of who she was. "You are talented, Amelia." He finally broke the silence. "And no one should underestimate that." She didn't know how to respond. For years, she had gotten used to being treated as disposable, and now a complete stranger, an influential and powerful man, defended her talent as if he saw in her something that no one else did. "Thank you," she murmured, still dazed. Daniel nodded and, without further explanations, walked away, leaving Amelia with too many questions and not enough answers. In the following days, the impact of that morning was still felt in the pastry shop. Without Benjamin around, the atmosphere seemed lighter, but Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that something big was yet to come. And that feeling was confirmed when 3 days later, Daniel returned to the pastry shop. This time, he wasn't there to have coffee or observe the service. He walked directly to Amelia, his eyes filled with an enigmatic gleam. "Can we talk?" he asked. Amelia hesitated for a moment before nodding. Daniel led her to a reserved room in the pastry shop, where coffee was already awaiting them. The setting was intimate, illuminated by a soft light that highlighted the impenetrable features of the businessman. "I want to make an invitation to you," he began, pausing before continuing. "I have a new project, and I need someone with your talent. But I warn you that it won't be something simple. It involves traveling, stepping out of your comfort zone, and taking risks." Amelia's heart raced. Daniel's words carried a weight she didn't yet fully understand. Something within her told her that this moment was a turning point, that accepting this proposal would change her life forever. But what exactly did he want from her? Why was someone like him, a renowned businessman, so interested in her talent? Amelia realized that at that moment she was faced with a choice that could transform everything she knew. And Daniel's intense gaze told her that this decision was just the beginning of something much greater. The silence hung over the table as Amelia tried to process Daniel's words. The coffee between them was slowly cooling, ignored. That invitation sounded like a portal to a new world, but what exactly did he want from her? She observed him more closely. Daniel was an intriguing man. His posture was impeccable, his gaze sharp, and there was something in the way he spoke, a steadfast confidence, as if he were always in control of the situation. But, at the same time, something about him seemed contained, as if he was hiding more than he showed. "Travel?" Amelia finally broke the silence, her voice still heavy with uncertainty. "Where to?" Daniel smiled slightly, resting his elbows on the table and intertwining his fingers as if he enjoyed her hesitation. "To a special place," he replied enigmatically. "I want to launch a new line of artisanal chocolates, and I need someone who understands the true value of confectionery, someone with passion for what they do." She blinked a few times, surprised. Chocolates? Was he serious? Her heart raced. Creating sweets had always been her passion, and the idea of working on something like that excited her, but there were still doubts. "And why me?" she questioned, frowning. "You could hire any renowned chef for this." Daniel leaned slightly forward without breaking eye contact. "Because I saw the way you work, Amelia. You put your soul into what you do. It's not just technique, it's art, and I want someone who truly cares about every detail." The way he said those words sent a shiver down Amelia's spine. It was the first time someone recognized her talent in this way, but at the same time, it made her uneasy. "It sounds like an incredible opportunity, but I can't just drop everything suddenly." She pondered, still uncertain. "I'm not asking you to decide right now," Daniel replied with a half smile, "but I want you to think about it." He pulled out a card from his pocket and slid it smoothly across the table to her. "If you accept, meet me here tomorrow, at 8 in the evening," he said, before standing up. Amelia looked at the little piece of paper in her hands. It was an address, with no further explanations. When she looked up again, Daniel was already leaving the patisserie. He didn't insist, he didn't plead, he just cast one last glance before disappearing through the door. Amelia stayed there, frozen, feeling a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. Something inside her told her that if she accepted that proposal, her life would never be the same. That night was long. Amelia tossed and turned in bed countless times, her thoughts in turmoil. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. He wanted her to work on a special project. He wanted her to travel. But why? Was there something more to this story? She couldn't deny that she was tempted. For years, she had dreamed of a chance to showcase her talent, to do something truly meaningful with her confectionery. But at the same time, there was the fear of the unknown. And more than that, there was Daniel. The way he looked at her, as if he saw beyond what she herself could see, that unsettled her. She didn't know if she liked it. When the sun began to light up her window, Amelia realized she already had her answer. She would go. The next night, Amelia arrived at the indicated address. The place was an elegant restaurant with dim lights and an intimate atmosphere. Her heart raced as she crossed the dining area. A receptionist guided her to a private room where Daniel was already waiting for her. He raised his eyes as soon as she entered, a discreet smile appearing on his lips. "I'm glad you came," he said, indicating the chair in front of him. Amelia sat down, trying to hide her anxiety. Dinner was served, but she barely paid attention to the food. She wanted answers. "So tell me more about this project," she said, looking directly into his eyes. Daniel set his fork down on the plate and looked at her for a moment before responding. "I want to create an exclusive line of fine chocolates inspired by traditional recipes and authentic flavors," he explained. "But this goes beyond a simple product. I want it to be something unique, something that tells a story." Amelia absorbed his words. He spoke with passion, with an intensity that made her believe in every word. But there were still questions. "And why do we need to travel for that?" she questioned. Daniel took a sip of wine before responding. "Because the best cocoa and the purest ingredients are far from here. I want you to see with your own eyes, to experience it, to feel the essence of this project before putting it into practice." She hadn't expected that answer, but it made sense. If it was to create something truly special, she needed to go to the source. "And when do we leave?" she asked, her decision already made. Daniel smiled, satisfied. "Tomorrow afternoon." Amelia's heart leaped. She thought she would have more time to prepare, but apparently there was no room for hesitation in Daniel's life. "That fast," she murmured. "Opportunities don't wait, Amelia," he said, leaning slightly forward. "And I feel this is one you won't want to miss." She held her breath for a moment. He was right. Something inside her told her that this was the chance she had been waiting for her whole life. And so, not knowing exactly what awaited her, Amelia accepted the invitation. But what she didn't know was that this trip wasn't just about chocolates and business. This trip would change her life forever. The afternoon sun painted the sky with golden hues when Amelia closed her suitcase. The weight of the decision still pulsed in her chest, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was taking control of her life. Anxiety mingled with excitement as she looked around her small apartment, recording every detail in her memory before leaving. She didn't exactly know what awaited her, but something inside her whispered that this trip wouldn't just be about new chocolates. The taxi took her to the airport, where she found Daniel waiting for her near the boarding gate. He wore a casual, yet impeccable outfit, and looked at her with a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Punctual," he said, with a discreet smile. "And you seemed to doubt that I would come," Amelia replied, crossing her arms, trying to mask her restlessness. "Let's say I just like to see determination in people's eyes," Daniel responded, observing her in a way that made her heart race. The flight went on in silence for a while. Amelia gazed out the window, watching the clouds pass beneath them, while trying to ignore the strange tension between herself and Daniel. There was something in him that challenged her, that made her question what she really knew about that man. It was Daniel who broke the silence first. "You must be wondering why exactly I chose you for this project." She turned her face to confront him. "A little. It seems like you could have any specialist by your side." "I could," he agreed, leaning slightly forward. "But the truth is, most people who work with confectionery see this merely as a business. You see it as art. That makes all the difference." Amelia bit her lip, surprised by the way he seemed to perceive her. "I just love what I do," she murmured. "And that is rare," Daniel countered. The plane landed in a remote area of the city. The air had a different smell there, purer, infused with the fragrance of nearby vineyards. Amelia got out of the car that was waiting for them and was impressed by the scenery. Before them, a vast estate stretched out, surrounded by hills covered in vineyards. The main house was a rustic but majestic structure made of ancient stones and dark wood. The air was infused with the scent of damp earth and the mild perfume of the wine aging in the underground cellars. Amelia turned on her heels, absorbing it all. "Welcome," Daniel said, watching her reaction. "This place is amazing," she murmured, still enchanted. "Here is where everything will begin." Amelia didn't quite know if he was talking about the chocolate project or something deeper. The following days were intense. Daniel introduced her to master chocolatiers, farmers who grew the purest cocoa, specialists who understood the secrets of fermentation and roasting the beans. Amelia absorbed every detail, every new piece of information, fascinated by the process. But amidst meetings and tastings, another dynamic began to form between her and Daniel. On the third day, after a long walk through the vineyards, he invited her to dinner on the estate's terrace. The table was set with low candles, wine glasses, and refined dishes prepared by a local chef. The evening breeze brought the scent of surrounding flowers, creating an almost magical atmosphere. "Have you ever imagined being in a place like this?" he asked, raising his glass for a toast. Amelia smiled, taking her glass as well. "Never, but I think I'm starting to like it." They toasted, and his gaze lingered on hers for too long. There was something in Daniel's eyes, something intense, something that made her hold her breath without realizing it. "You intrigue me." "Amelia," he said, lowering his glass. She raised an eyebrow. "Is that good or bad?" "It is dangerous." She felt a knot in her stomach. "And why?" Daniel smiled, but didn't respond. That night, Amelia had trouble sleeping. It wasn't just the weight of the new project, but the weight of what she felt whenever she was near Daniel. The next day, while they worked together in the experimental kitchen, something unexpected happened. Amelia was tasting a new chocolate mixture when, distracted, she let some of the coating smudge the tips of her fingers. Before she could clean it off, Daniel, who was by her side, firmly held her hand. "Let me see," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Her heart raced as he, without breaking eye contact, ran his thumb over her skin, wiping the chocolate residue in a way that was anything but innocent. Amelia caught her breath. The air between them felt electric, charged with something neither of them wanted to name. Finally, Daniel pulled away, but his gaze told her he felt the same thing she did. Amelia knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but what she didn't know was that this was just the beginning, because hidden beneath the shine of her new opportunity, there were secrets that were about to come to light, and when they did, nothing would be the same as before. Amelia woke up to the sweet aroma of cocoa hanging in the air. Daniel's property seemed to have a life of its own, with the rustling of the vines in the wind and the distant singing of birds creating a natural melody. Still in bed, she took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. Since arriving there, she felt enveloped by a mix of enchantment and uncertainty. The project was promising, and working with such pure ingredients in such a sophisticated environment was a dream. But there was something more, something that kept her alert, as if she were on the edge of a cliff about to step into the unknown. And this something had a name, Daniel. Since the subtle touch the previous day, the tension between them had only increased. The lingering glances, the moments when their hands accidentally met. There was an energy between them that was impossible to ignore, but Amelia knew that surrendering to it could be dangerous. That morning, after dressing in light clothing, she found Daniel already waiting for her on the terrace of the main house. The breakfast table was impeccable, filled with fresh fruits, artisanal breads, and a selection of the chocolates they were testing. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, lifting his eyes as she approached. "Yes, I mean, sort of," she replied, picking up a cup of coffee. Daniel smiled to the side. "Thinking about the project?" Amelia hesitated for a second before nodding. "Yes, and everything that's happening. It feels like a dream." "And are you afraid of dreams?" She looked up at him, feeling a shiver run down her spine. "It depends on the kind of dream. Some seem too good to be true." Daniel tilted his head slightly, evaluating her. "And what if they are? Would you run away?" Her heart raced. There was a provocation in the question, but also a challenge. Daniel seemed to want to push her to her limits, to make her confront something she wasn't ready to face. "I don't know," Amelia replied, trying to maintain her composure, "but I'm sure I would find out." He chuckled softly, pleased with her answer. "I have something special for you today," he announced, changing the subject. "What?" "I want to take you to a place," he said as he got up. "A place that is part of my story." Amelia furrowed her brow, intrigued. "And where is this place?" "You'll see." The car traveled down narrow roads, flanked by golden fields and sturdy trees. Daniel drove in silence, occasionally stealing glances at her. Amelia, in turn, tried to ignore the growing nervousness inside her. When they finally arrived, she was breathless. Before them stood an ancient vineyard property, even more charming than the previous one. The place had an almost magical air, as if it had stopped in time. The scent of the aged wood mingled with the perfume of the ripe grapes, and the distant sound of workers moving among the barrels echoed through the air. "This place has belonged to my family for generations," Daniel revealed, looking around with a nostalgic glimmer in his eyes. "It was here that I learned the importance of flavor, of tradition." Amelia ran her fingers along one of the stone walls, absorbing the atmosphere. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "And it was here that I had the idea for our project," he continued. "I want to merge the tradition of wine with the sophistication of chocolate, create something that awakens emotions." She turned. To him, surprised. "This combination, I never thought about it." "Because few see beyond the obvious," Daniel replied, stepping closer. "But you do." Amelia felt her breath falter. They were too close. Daniel's gaze held her captive, challenging her to look away. But she didn't. The silence between them grew thick, laden with something undeniable. "I think we should start the research then," she murmured, trying to break the tension. "Yes," Daniel agreed, but he didn't move. For a moment, Amelia thought he might say something more. Perhaps something that would change everything, but instead, he took a step back, taking a deep breath. "Come, I want to show you something," he said, turning abruptly. Amelia blinked, confused, but followed him. Daniel led her to an underground cellar, where shelves filled with ancient bottles stretched for meters. The air there was cool, almost cold, and the aroma of oak and aged grapes created an intoxicating scent. "And this is the heart of my legacy," he said, carefully picking up a bottle of wine. "Each bottle has a story, each flavor a secret." Amelia watched as he poured a little wine into 2 glasses. "Try it," he urged. She brought the glass to her lips, feeling the liquid caress her tongue before sliding smoothly down her throat. The flavor was intense, full-bodied, with notes of dark fruits and spices. "This is amazing," she said, impressed. Daniel smiled, satisfied. "Now imagine this with chocolate," he murmured, watching her closely. Amelia swallowed hard. She didn't know if he was talking about the combination of flavors or something deeper. And then it happened. As she reached out to return the glass, her fingers brushed against his. It was a brief touch, but it was charged with electricity. Neither of them moved away immediately. Daniel's gaze became more intense, darker. "Amelia," he began, his voice low, almost a whisper. She held her breath, but before any words were spoken, a sound in the background interrupted the moment. Footsteps. Someone was there. Daniel turned quickly, his face assuming a serious expression. Amelia followed his gaze to the entrance of the cellar, where a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a tall man, dressed soberly, but with a calculating look. "So you came back," the stranger said, addressing Daniel. The tension in the air changed instantly. Amelia felt her stomach twist. Who was that man? And why did Daniel suddenly seem tense? She realized at that moment that there was much more to this trip than just chocolates and wines, and that Daniel's secrets were about to come to light. The air in the cellar had become heavy, dense, charged with a tension that Amelia did not fully understand. The man in front of her had a rigid posture, sharp gaze, as if he were analyzing every detail of the scene before him. But what unsettled her the most was the way Daniel reacted. He was no longer the self-assured businessman, owner of every step he took. There was something dark in the way his shoulders tensed, in the way his eyes scrutinized the stranger. "What are you doing here?" Daniel broke the silence, his voice firm but laden with something deeper. The man smiled slyly, crossing his arms. "I could ask you the same, but I think the answer would be obvious." Amelia observed the exchange of words, feeling a discomfort grow within her. Something was happening there, something she did not understand. "Amelia, can you give us a moment?" Daniel asked, not diverting his gaze from the stranger. There was a discreet command in his voice, something that made her hesitate, but before she could respond, the mysterious man stepped forward. "Ah, so this is the woman who has been catching your attention lately," he said, letting the phrase hang in the air. Daniel's eyes turned icy, and Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't want to leave. Something told her she needed to hear that conversation. "Amelia, please." Daniel's tone was now a bit softer but still carried urgency. Amelia hesitated but slowly nodded. With careful steps, she left the cellar, feeling the weight of the 2 men's gazes on her back. But instead of walking away completely, she stayed close to the door, listening. The voices became quieter, but they were still audible enough for her to catch fragments of what they were saying. "You are playing with fire, Daniel. That doesn't concern you. You know what you always say, nothing we do here stays in the past." A heavy silence followed. "Let me handle this my way." "Are you sure you are handling anything? Because from what I can see, you are distracted." Amelia felt a knot form in her stomach. Were they talking about her? She decided she had heard enough. With quick steps, she moved toward the exit of the winery, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling that she was getting involved in something much larger than she imagined. Later that night, Amelia found herself on the property's porch, looking at the dark hills ahead of her. The night breeze blew gently, bringing with it the aroma of freshly fermented wine. She wanted to understand what was happening. Who was that man? What secrets was Daniel hiding? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She turned and saw Daniel approaching. He was no longer wearing his usual formal suit. He had his dress shirt slightly open at the chest, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. His expression was more relaxed, but there was still something in his gaze. "You seem lost in thought," he commented, leaning on the railing of the porch beside her. Amelia took a deep breath before responding. "Maybe because I am." Daniel did not reply. Immediately, he just watched her, as if he knew exactly what was going on in her mind. "You want to know about today, don't you?" She turned to him, crossing her arms. "I do." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of vulnerability. "That man, he's someone from my past, someone who represents a part of my life that I don't like to revisit. And that part has to do with this project. With me," Amelia insisted, trying to decipher him. Daniel looked at her for a long moment before stepping back a bit, as if he needed space to choose the right words. "Let's say that everything is connected," she frowned. "That doesn't answer anything, Daniel." He released a low laugh, but without humor. "I know." For a moment, only the sound of the wind filled the silence between them. But then Daniel took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "I didn't want you to get involved in this." Amelia's heart raced. "But I am already involved, aren't I?" He did not answer. He just looked closely at her, his intense gaze piercing hers. Amelia's breathing became irregular. She knew she should take a step back, create a barrier, but she couldn't. And Daniel noticed it. He slowly raised one hand, his fingers brushing the side of her face, as if testing an invisible boundary. "Do you have any idea what you are doing to me?" he murmured. Amelia swallowed hard. "I could ask you the same." Daniel's smile was small but filled with meaning, and then, without further hesitation, he leaned in. The kiss was slow, exploratory, as if they were both savoring something that was already meant to happen. Daniel's mouth was warm against hers, and Amelia felt a shiver run through every inch of her body. His hands slid to her waist, gently pulling her closer, while her fingers found his hair, feeling the soft texture between her fingers. The world around them faded away. The wind, the distant sound of leaves rustling. Nothing else mattered. But that moment, when they finally pulled apart, their foreheads were still glued together, their breaths mingling. "This might be a problem," Daniel murmured, his eyes still closed. Amelia smiled faintly. "I've already realized you like problems." He chuckled softly before opening his eyes and staring at her. "Only the ones worth it." Amelia knew at that moment that something inside her had changed, but what she didn't know was that this would only be the first of many nights when her feelings and certainties would be tested. Because no matter how perfect that moment seemed, the secrets surrounding Daniel were still there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. And when that happened, nothing would be the same. Amelia couldn't sleep that night. After the kiss, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She felt torn between the excitement of what had happened and the uncomfortable feeling that something was out of place. Daniel was a mystery. He enveloped her, attracted her, made every touch and glance seem loaded with meaning. But at the same time, he hid parts of himself, as if he feared she would see something she shouldn't. And that conversation in the cellar, the unknown man, the enigmatic tone. Something told her that Daniel was not just the visionary businessman he claimed to be. The next morning, Amelia decided to focus on work. She dove into chocolate testing, experimented with new combinations, noted adjustments. She needed to keep her mind occupied. But even while trying to concentrate, she felt Daniel's gaze on her whenever they were in the same space, and it disturbed her. In the late afternoon, he approached. "Can we talk?" Daniel asked, his voice low and controlled. Amelia hesitated, but nodded. He led her to the terrace where the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange. The scene was beautiful, but the tension between them made the moment unsettling. "You seem different today," Daniel commented, watching her closely. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "I think I have reasons to be. Because of what happened between us, or because of what happened in the cellar?" Amelia turned to him, crossing her arms. "Both." Daniel was silent for a few moments. The wind tousled his hair, but he didn't look away. "I knew you would. Ask questions," he said finally. "And are you willing to give me answers?" Amelia challenged. Daniel took a deep breath, as if battling with himself. "I am not a man who reveals his secrets easily, Amelia, but I want you to know that everything I do has a purpose." She raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't tell me anything." "Not yet, but you need to trust me." Amelia felt a mix of frustration and fascination. He was asking for trust, but at the same time refused to give her any explanation. "And this project?" she asked, trying to change the focus. "Is it really about chocolates and wines, or is there something more?" Daniel hesitated, and it was enough for her to feel a tightening in her chest. "I would never lie to you about this," he replied, looking away at the horizon. "Dungy, but there are layers to this story that you don't yet know." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. "And will I get to know them?" Daniel turned to her, his gaze laden with something that seemed like concern. "I hope you don't have to." The silence between them lingered. The weight of Daniel's words made Amelia feel a knot in her throat. "I need to continue with the tests," she said, finally stepping away. She didn't want to hear anything more. Not now. In the following days, Amelia noticed subtle changes around her. There were strange movements at the winery. Unknown men appeared occasionally, always engaged in discreet conversations with Daniel. And every time she tried to ask about what was going on, he would change the subject. But what caught her attention the most were the looks from the employees. Some watched her with curious, almost evaluative gazes, as if they were trying to understand her presence there. Until one afternoon, Amelia found an anonymous note in her room. "Be careful. Not everything here is what it seems." Her heart raced. She looked around, as if expecting to find someone hidden in the shadows, but she was alone. Holding the paper between her fingers, she felt a chill. What did that mean? Who had left that message? And more importantly, was she getting involved in something dangerous without knowing? Amelia decided she needed to uncover the truth. That night, Daniel invited her to dinner at the main house. The table was carefully set, and the lit fireplace added a cozy touch to the atmosphere. Amelia knew she should confront him, demand answers. But when his eyes met hers, all her anger and suspicion were replaced by something deeper. "You seem worried," Daniel said, pouring her a glass of wine. She held the glass but didn't drink. "Maybe because I am," she replied, watching him closely. Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her with an indecipherable look. "Are you thinking of leaving?" The question caught Amelia off guard. "Should I?" He didn't answer immediately. "If I asked you to stay, would you?" Amelia felt her chest tighten. "It depends. If you finally trusted me enough to tell me what's really going on here." Daniel's expression darkened. "You're asking for something I can't give. Then why do you want me to stay?" Daniel stood up, walking over to her. He paused beside her, his imposing and warm presence surrounding her. "Because, despite everything, I need you here." Amelia held her breath as he raised his hand, lightly touching her face. "You are the only genuine thing in this place, and I'm not ready to lose that." Her heart raced. "Then stop hiding things from me," she whispered. Daniel closed, his eyes for a moment as if fighting with himself. "I wish I could do that." Amelia felt a mix of anger and desire. He was an enigma, a maze with no exit, and at the same time, it was impossible to pull away. In that moment, she realized something. No matter how hard she tried to resist, she was already too involved. But she still didn't know that very night, something would happen to change everything. Because while they shared that intense moment, someone was watching them. And Daniel's past was about to catch up with them. The wind was blowing strongly that night, making the porch curtains dance gently. The dinner with Daniel had ended, but Amelia still felt the weight of what had happened between them. The conversation, the tension, his touch on her face, all of that still pulsed within her. But there was something more, something that sent a persistent shiver down her spine. After the exchange of intense glances and unspoken words, Amelia decided to walk around the property to try to organize her thoughts. However, as she descended the main house's stairs, something caught her attention. There was a silhouette standing in the middle of the vineyards. She froze instantly. The figure was partially hidden among the vines, but it was noticeable enough for Amelia to know it wasn't one of the staff. Her heart raced. Who could be there in the dark, watching the house? Instinctively, she took a step back, but at the same moment, the silhouette moved. Amelia held her breath. For a moment, it seemed like the person was coming towards her, but then, as if realizing it had been noticed, the figure simply vanished into the darkness. A chill ran down her skin. "What's happening here?" she murmured. To herself, feeling a mix of fear and frustration. She wasn't imagining things. Someone was watching her, and that wasn't a coincidence. The next morning, Amelia tried to pretend that nothing had happened, but inside she was alert. During breakfast, Daniel was quieter than usual. He seemed distracted, thoughtful, his gaze lost at some point on the horizon. Amelia cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "Did you sleep well?" Daniel blinked, as if returning to reality. "Not really," he admitted, picking up his coffee cup. "I've got things on my mind." She noticed the hesitation in his voice, but instead of pressing him, she decided to take a different path. "Me too." He lifted his eyes to her, attentive. Did something happen? Amelia took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I saw someone in the vineyards last night." Daniel's face hardened immediately. "What do you mean?" "Someone was standing among the vines, watching me. But when they noticed I saw, they disappeared." Daniel's muscles tensed. He put down the cup on the table and immediately stood up. "Are you sure about that?" Amelia nodded. "Absolutely." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, clearly irritated. "This shouldn't be happening," she frowned. "What shouldn't be happening?" Daniel hesitated. "Nothing," he said quickly. "I'll handle this." "Daniel, wait." Amelia stood up too, holding his arm. "You need to tell me the truth." He looked at her, his gaze filled with something Amelia couldn't decipher immediately. "Amelia," he began, but then stopped. His face showed inner conflict, and then, before he could say anything, one of the staff hurried into the room. "Mr. Daniel," the man said nervously, "there's a visitor waiting for you." Daniel turned to the staff, his expression completely closing off. "Who?" The staff hesitated. He didn't say his name, just stated that you would understand. The silence that followed was thick. Amelia felt her heart race. Daniel clenched his fists before turning to her. "I need to deal with this." Amelia wanted to argue, wanted to say that he couldn't keep excluding her from this, but his gaze said this wasn't a choice. It was a silent order, and even if she didn't want to, Amelia obeyed. But she wouldn't stand by idly. Curiosity and fear mixed inside her as she watched Daniel walk away toward the underground cellar. She knew she shouldn't follow him, but the feeling that something was very wrong was too strong to ignore. Waiting a few seconds to make sure no one would see her, Amelia walked lightly to the entrance of the cellar. The door was slightly ajar, and from where she stood, she could hear voices. "I warned you this would happen, Daniel. You're getting distracted." It was a male voice, firm. "I don't need your warnings," Daniel snapped back, irritated. "I already have enough problems." "And do you want to add one more? Because if this continues, that's what's going to happen." There was a tense silence. Amelia held her breath. "You don't understand," Daniel continued. "I didn't plan this." "Didn't plan? So you're going to tell me you didn't know exactly what you were doing when you brought her here?" Amelia felt a shock run through her body. They were talking about her. "I never wanted her to be involved in this," Daniel replied, his voice heavy with a mix of anger and frustration. The other man chuckled softly. "But she is involved now. And now, what will you do with her?" Amelia stepped back, feeling the air leave her lungs. Every word she heard burned in her chest. She didn't know exactly what that meant, but she knew one thing. Daniel was hiding something much bigger than he imagined, and worse, she was part of it. Amelia didn't return to the main house. Instead, she went straight to the vineyards where she sat among the vines and took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions within her. She felt used. Did Daniel plan this? Had he lied to her? The memories came like a hurricane. His intense gaze, the carefully chosen words, the way he said he needed her, and now everything seemed like a grand illusion. Her chest ached. She wanted to confront him, demand answers. But she also feared the response, because deep down, something told her that the truth could be even worse than she imagined. Amelia felt her chest tighten as she walked back to the property. The sun was already setting, painting the sky with orange and purple hues, but the beauty around her went unnoticed. Her mind was still trapped in the words she had overheard while hiding in the cellar. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you brought her here." The phrase echoed inside her like thunder. Every glance, every touch, every word spoken by Daniel now seemed loaded with a different weight. Was it all a plan? Did he really need her there? Or was she just a piece in something bigger? Her body was tense, her hands shook with anger and frustration. She couldn't simply ignore this. She needed answers. Now. With firm steps, Amelia entered the main house. She walked down the silent corridor and climbed the stairs to Daniel's office. The door was ajar, and inside the room, he was standing with his back to her, looking out the large glass window. "You lied to me." Her voice cut through the silence of the room. Daniel slowly turned around, his gaze a mix of surprise and caution. "Amelia." "No," she interrupted, moving toward him. "No games, no avoidance. I want the truth. Now." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, visibly tense. "What exactly are you talking about?" Amelia let out a dry, incredulous laugh. "You know what I'm talking about. I heard your conversation in the cellar, Daniel. You and that man were talking about me." His expression hardened. "Were you eavesdropping behind the door? Is that how you're going to react?" Amelia crossed her arms, feeling her heart hammer against her chest. "Are you going to try to flip the situation? Like I'm the wrong one for wanting to understand what the hell I got myself into?" Daniel ran his hand through his hair, clearly struggling with something internal. "Amelia, I never wanted you to find out this way." "So you admit there's something to know?" His silence was the answer she dreaded. Amelia took a step back, feeling a mix of pain and indignation grow inside her. Was it all a plan? Her voice came out more fragile than she wanted. "From the beginning?" Daniel frowned, his eyes becoming more intense. "No, I swear it's not." "Then what was it?" because that man seemed very sure that you knew exactly what you were doing when you brought me here." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment before looking at her again. "In the beginning, yes, you were part of the plan." The ground seemed to disappear beneath Amelia's feet. She felt her stomach churn. "I knew," she whispered, her throat tightening. "But not in the way you're thinking." Daniel quickly tried to amend his statement, taking a step closer to her. "At first, yes, I needed someone with your talent for the project. But over time, you became much more than that." Amelia laughed nervously. "Much more? How exactly?" He hesitated for a moment, and then, in a swift gesture, he took her hands, making her feel the warmth of his skin. "I fell in love with you, Amelia." Her eyes widened. Daniel had never said that. He had never exposed his feelings so clearly. But now, hearing those words didn't mean enough. She pulled her hands away, taking another step back. "Don't do this," her voice faltered. "Don't throw pretty words around to try to justify your lies." Daniel seemed to shrink with her response. "I'm not lying." Amelia felt her eyes burn, but she wouldn't let the tears fall. "You manipulated everything, Daniel. You brought me here with hidden intentions and thought I would never find out. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did." The pain in her voice made Daniel close his eyes, as if he were being hit physically by her words. A heavy silence settled in. Then, in a desperate gesture, he approached once more. "Amelia, I can tell you everything, but I need you to trust me." She looked at him, feeling her chest heavy, her mind screaming for her to leave. "How can I trust you after this?" Daniel's expression turned dark. "Because if you don't trust, you'll end up becoming a target." Amelia frowned, a chill running down her spine. "What do you mean by that?" Daniel hesitated. And then, in a low and serious tone, he replied, "You have no idea of the danger you're in." Amelia's blood ran cold. She didn't know what was worse, the anger she felt toward Daniel for deceiving her, or the fear of what he had just said. Because at that moment, it became clear that the story she thought she knew was just beginning, and that there was much more at stake than just her broken heart. The silence that followed was suffocating. Amelia felt the weight of Daniel's words sinking into her mind, each syllable pulsing like an alarm within her. "You have no idea the danger you're in." Her heart was hammering in her chest, her breath short. Until that moment, all she wanted was to confront him, to wrench answers about his manipulation, but now something much larger hung in the air. "What did you mean by that?" Amelia asked, her voice softer than she intended. Daniel ran a hand over his face, visibly torn. He wanted to tell her. She could see that in his eyes, but at the same time there was a latent fear there. "Amelia," he sighed, closing his eyes for a moment. "I swear I never wanted to involve you in this." "In this what?" She pressed, taking a step forward. "You're talking about danger, Daniel, and I want to know exactly what I'm in danger of." Daniel stared at her for a long time before finally murmuring, "There are things about me that you don't know." "Great," she let out a nervous laugh. "How about you start telling me?" He hesitated, as if grappling with an internal battle. But then, in a defeated sigh, he murmured, "My father was an influential man, but not in the right way." Amelia blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in the conversation. "What do you mean?" Daniel stepped away, walking to the window, looking outside as if searching for something on the horizon. "He built this winery from the ground up, turned it into an empire, but not all of his businesses were legitimate." Amelia held her breath. "You're saying he was—" "Yes," Daniel interrupted, turning to her. "He had dangerous connections, made deals with the wrong people, and when he died, he left behind many enemies." Amelia swallowed hard. And you inherited those enemies and his debts, the broken promises, the shattered alliances. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. For years I fought to clear my family's name, to turn this place into something pure, legitimate. But they didn't let you, did they? Amelia's voice came out in a whisper. Daniel gave a bitter smile. To them, I'm still a player in this game. Amelia felt dizzy. And me? Where do I fit into this? Daniel's face closed up, his look growing darker. At first, I thought I could use you to soften the business. Your passion, your dedication. You would attract legitimate investors. You would be a shield against the dark side of this empire. Amelia's chest tightened. So it was true. It was. But it's not anymore. She raised her eyebrows. What changed? Daniel stepped closer, stopping so near that she could feel the heat of his body. You? Amelia held her breath. I fell in love with you, Amelia. The words were intense, loaded with real weight, but this time it wasn't enough to erase her pain. And that makes everything better? She asked, her voice choked. Daniel touched her face with the tips of his fingers, and Amelia hated the fact that her body still reacted to his touch. I know I messed up, he said, his voice rough, but I need you to trust me now. How can I trust someone who used me? He closed his eyes, as if feeling a physical pain. Because now everything I do is to protect you. Amelia felt a knot in her throat. From what, Daniel? He hesitated before murmuring, From him. The word was said with a huge weight. From whom? Before he could answer, a sound echoed down the hallway. Footsteps. Hasty footsteps. The office door burst open, and one of the staff members entered, pale. Mr. Daniel, we have a problem. Daniel turned immediately. What happened? The staff member quickly glanced at Amelia before looking back at Daniel. He's here. Amelia's blood ran cold. He who? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he held her hand tightly. Do you trust me? Amelia wanted to say no. She wanted to scream that she didn't trust any of this. But deep down, something within her told her that this wasn't the time to run. She nodded. Daniel held her hand tighter. Then come with me. The main hall was silent. Too silent. Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine as she walked beside Daniel. He held her hand tightly, his fingers interlaced with hers as if he wanted to ensure she wouldn't pull away. Then she saw him, the man from before, the same one she had seen in the cellar. He was standing in the middle of the hall, dressed impeccably, with a nearly amused smile on his lips. Danielle, he greeted with a slight nod of his head. What do you want? Daniel was direct. The man smiled. Just a conversation. Daniel tightened his grip on Amelia's hand. You and I both know that this isn't just that. The man chuckled softly. You've always been smart, but I guess not smart enough. He then shifted his gaze to Amelia. And this is the famous Amelia. She felt a chill. Keep her out of this, Daniel growled. The man raised his hands, feigning innocence. I didn't come to cause trouble. I just want you to remember the deal, Daniel. Daniel stood still. I remember. Then you know your time is running out. Amelia didn't fully understand, but she knew this wasn't good. The man gave one last smile before turning to leave, but before he went, he cast a final look at Daniel. Choose your next steps wisely. You know what's at stake. And then he was gone. Amelia felt her whole body tremble. She turned to Daniel, her heart racing. What's happening? Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, there was something different in his gaze. I promised I would make the decisions alongside you. He gently held her face. Now you need to decide if you want to stay or leave. Amelia knew at that moment that her life would never be the same, and that her heart had already made its choice. Amelia felt her heart hammering against her chest. The presence of that man on Daniel's property was not just a warning, it was a veiled threat. Every word spoken seemed to carry a weight that she still did not fully understand. But she knew that the decision she made at that moment would change everything. She looked at Daniel. He was tense, his shoulders rigid, his eyes laden with a mix of exhaustion and worry. He wanted her there, but at the same time, he seemed ready to let her go if that was her choice. Amelia took a deep breath. "I'm not leaving." Daniel blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I am. I may be confused, hurt, and completely lost in all of this, but one thing I know, I am not going to run away." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. He just looked at her as if trying to process her words. Then, slowly, a tired smile appeared on his lips. "You really don't make things easy for me, do you?" Amelia crossed her arms. "And you really complicate everything, for me." They stared at each other for a moment before Daniel let out a low laugh, a rough sound that sent a shiver down Amelia's spine. "I guess we're even then." She rolled her eyes, but a smile began to form on her lips. Even amidst all the chaos, Daniel still managed to draw something from her that no other man ever had. He took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair. "All right, but if you stay, it will be on my terms." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what would those terms be?" "No secrets between us." She looked at him, surprised. "Does that mean you're going to tell me everything?" Daniel nodded. "I will, but in return, you need to trust me completely." Amelia hesitated for a moment. Trusting Daniel was something difficult. He had hidden things from her before, but at the same time, he was opening a door now, a path that led them to something stronger, deeper. So, taking a deep breath, she extended her hand to him. "I trust you." Daniel took her hand and pulled her close. His eyes traced every detail of her face before murmuring, "This is dangerous, you know. I'm beginning to get used to danger." He smiled, and before she could say anything else, he kissed her. This time, there were no doubts, no fear. It was a kiss full of silent promises, heavy with everything they couldn't put into words. And in that instant, Amelia knew she had made the right choice. The days that followed were intense. Now that Daniel had finally decided to tell the truth, Amelia found herself immersed in a world she had never imagined. He explained about his father's debts, the unresolved deals, and the men who still tried to control the empire he was attempting to rebuild. "They don't want me to fail," he said one night while they sat on the porch sipping wine. "They want me to carry on my father's legacy, but on their terms." Amelia frowned. "And what happens if you refuse?" Daniel looked to the horizon. "They make my life impossible, and now yours too." She felt a chill run down her spine. But she didn't back down. "So, what are we going to do?" Daniel turned his face to her, his expression softening. "We're going to turn this place into what it always should have been." And that's exactly what they did. Amelia threw herself into the chocolate project with more passion than ever. Every recipe, every flavor combination, every detail was carefully thought out to create something truly unique. And by her side, Daniel worked tirelessly, ensuring that the business remained strong and away from the influence of those trying to control him. Together, they created something powerful. And little by little, they began to show the world they were there to stay. The night of the launch of the new line of chocolates was a grand event. The property was illuminated with golden lights, the garden decorated with sophisticated tables, filled with fine sweets and champagne flutes. Businessmen, investors, and journalists were present, all eager to see what Daniel and Amelia had created. And, amidst all the excitement, Amelia felt her heart race as she realized how much everything had changed. She was no longer just the pastry chef who suffered humiliations from a cruel manager. Now she was part of something bigger, something built with her own hands. And more than that, she was part of Daniel's life in a way she had never imagined. He found her in the middle of the hall, holding 2 champagne flutes. "A toast?" he suggested, handing her a glass. Amelia smiled. "To the success of the project." Daniel shook his head. "To what comes next?" She raised an eyebrow. "And what comes next?" Daniel stepped closer, looking deeply into her eyes. "Whatever we want." Amelia felt her heart race. And then, under the gaze of everyone, Daniel pulled her in for a kiss. This time there was no fear, no doubts. There was only the certainty that together they could face anything. Because despite all the lies, secrets, and dangers, their love was real. The moon lingered in the sky like a silent sentinel, while Amelia and Daniel walked through the vineyards, their hands intertwined. The property was more alive than ever. The business was thriving, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to be exactly as it should be. But the feeling of calm didn't last long. It was in the moment they reached the porch of the main house that they realized. The lights in Daniel's office were on, and the door was ajar. Amelia felt her stomach twist. "Did you leave someone inside?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Daniel frowned, slowly releasing her hand. "No." He moved forward. First, his steps cautious. Amelia followed him, her heart racing, the air growing heavy around them. As they pushed the door, they saw the figure waiting for them, the man from the cellar. He was sitting in the leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hands, as if he owned the place. "I'm glad you came back," he said, a sly smile on his lips. "I was starting to think I would have to leave a message." Daniel clenched his fists. "What do you want now?" The man tilted his head, savoring a sip of the drink before responding. "I came to give a warning." He set the glass down on the table, his eyes locking on Daniel with intensity. "Do you think you can just change the rules of the game? That you can leave behind what your father started?" Amelia held her breath. This was it. Daniel's past wasn't just trying to control him, it was trying to pull him back. Daniel crossed his arms, his jaw rigid. "I'm not my father," the man laughed, a cold and calculating sound. "But you carry his name, and as long as you do, his debts are still yours." Amelia felt a knot tighten in her chest. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low but cutting. "I've already paid more than enough." The man shook his head. "Oh, Daniel, you still don't understand, do you? The debt never ends." The tension in the air was suffocating. Amelia knew she was witnessing something bigger than she imagined, that it wasn't just a threat, it was an ultimatum. "And what if I refuse?" Daniel asked, his voice laden with challenge. The man smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then we will go after something you value." Amelia felt his gaze on her even before she lifted her face. The chill down her spine was instantaneous. The threat was direct. Daniel realized. His eyes darkened. His posture became even more rigid. "If you touch her..." The man raised a hand, interrupting. "I don't need to dirty my hands, Daniel. Just one slip from you, a moment of distraction, and everything you've built will crumble." The silence that followed was dense. Amelia saw in Daniel's eyes that he already knew what he had to do, and he hated it. The man slowly stood up, adjusting his jacket. "Think carefully. You have until tomorrow." And then, without another word, he left, leaving only the echo of his presence in the air. The silence that remained between Amelia and Daniel was different from all the previous ones. This time it was an abyss. What did he mean by that? Amelia's voice came out weak. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He turned away, rubbing his face, as if he were struggling against his own thoughts. And then, finally, he murmured, "He wants me to go back." Amelia felt a tightness in her chest. "Go back where?" Daniel raised his eyes to her. "To what my father did, to the kind of life I've spent years trying to escape." Her world spun. "But you can't. I don't have a choice, Amelia!" Daniel's explosion came forcefully, his gaze intense and full of pain. "If I don't do this, they will come after you." The air left her lungs. "So this is your solution? To surrender? To throw away everything we've built?" Daniel closed, his eyes as if trying to hold himself together. "I can't lose you." Amelia stepped closer, holding his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "You don't have to do this." His eyes shone with something that looked like a mix of desperation and desire. "Then tell me what to do." Amelia took a deep breath, and then the answer came. "We're going to put an end to this." The plan was risky. Daniel spent the night making calls, gathering information, exposing the weak links in the system, trying to trap him. The next morning, when the man returned for the answer, he found something he didn't expect. Daniel was waiting for him, but he wasn't alone. Amelia was by his side, and behind them a team of lawyers and police were waiting. "You made a mistake," Daniel said, crossing his arms. "You threatened the wrong person." The man laughed, but this time there was a slight tremor in his voice. "This isn't over, Daniel." But for the first time, Daniel seemed completely in control. "It is over." And then within minutes, everything collapsed. The illegal businesses were exposed, the forced debts were annulled, and the men trying to pull him back to the past were taken down. Amelia held Daniel's hand when it was all over, feeling his body finally relax. He turned to her, his eyes shining with something she had never seen before. Freedom. "It's over," he murmured. She smiled. "Yes." And then, without fear, without shadows, without secrets, he kissed her. This time it was a kiss of new beginnings, of a new chapter, of a story that finally belonged only to them. Years later, the winery thrived, the business grew, and Daniel and Amelia were stronger than ever. On a late afternoon, as they walked through the vineyards, Amelia stopped, holding Daniel's hand. He looked at her curiously. "What is it?" She smiled. "I just wanted to remember how much I love you." Daniel raised an eyebrow, amused. "You can remind me of that as many times as you want." She laughed, and before he could say anything else, kissed him. The breeze blew gently, and for the first time there were no more uncertainties, just the present, and a future that belonged entirely to them. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment telling us what moved you the most. We want to know your opinion.